because a lot of people left Apple because of the work conditions and his tyrannical style. And so today, people aren't willing to put up with that. They'll go somewhere else because life's too short.
Well, Mark Mears is a purposeful brand builder, servant leader, best-selling author who is passionately committed to helping individuals, teams, and organizations find purpose in fulfilling their growth potential. Capital GROWTH. Mark, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Great to be with you.
You know, to be honest, I know that there's a lot that you do, but I read your LinkedIn and I was like, you know, I'm just going to only read half of it because you do a lot more than what I just read. Yeah. But what would you say if somebody just met you off the street? What is it that you do?
Yeah, well, you spelled growth in all caps, and it was emphasized on purpose because I consider myself a growth junkie and unapologetic, non-reformed, just passionate, as you mentioned, and committed to growth in all of its forms. And for me, you know, throughout my career, I've always been growth-minded. And so we think about growth in many different ways. We think of it as sales or revenue or profit growth. Maybe we think of it as personal and professional development growth. And so my thesis will be based on not only those personal experiences over 35-ish years, as well as observations of those I admire, who I've studied, and also a curation of not only research to support my thesis, but best practices from subject matter experts that can go even deeper than I can go.
I was excited to talk to you have you on this podcast because we're both growth junkies. You know, our motto is growth is fun. I shared the dad joke with you, but you know, not everybody loves our company name, you know, Fun Guy Media, but you know, give it some time and it'll grow on you. Is the dad joke, right? So it's all about.
I'm the king of dad jokes. My daughters call me a walking, talking dad joke. So
one of the other things that was interesting to me was like, you have this background in marketing, a pretty vast, diverse background. Noodles Company, Schlotzsky's, Blimpie, Cheesecake Factory. What do they all have in common?
Well,
they're delicious.
But keep going.
You're the freaking CMO. You were at one point.
Yeah.
Like you were leading their marketing efforts across. And then I just listed the tastiest ones that I'm aware of. There's others.
You don't like the Cheesecake Factory? I was actually the first ever CMO for the Cheesecake Factory, and worked in other food companies, either when PepsiCo owned Pizza Hut, but also on the agency side, as we mentioned, Leo Burnett in Chicago working on a big chunk of McDonald's business, DDB in Dallas heading up the Frito-Lay business, and so food is important to me, but it's less about food, and I really kind of in the book unpack this idea of what does it mean to be purposeful, and instead of just what's your purpose. Now, we all want to find our purpose, of course, but it'll probably change many times throughout our life. But I think there's some core elements that kind of peek out every now and then if we're looking. And one of mine has always been being of service to people. I love to serve people. I love to entertain people. I love to create experiences over a meal. And I was also head of sales and marketing at Universal Studios Hollywood, which is where the entertainment piece comes in. And I just loved walking around the park, and I took a break during the day, and I just see these people having their best day. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a part of this. And that to me has always lit me up. And you know, I believe that it's helped make me a better leader because I believe servant leaders are the best kind of leaders. And I've been fortunate to have some great role models throughout my career, but also a couple stinkers. So I knew what I wanted to gravitate toward and what I wanted to kind of leave behind. And, you know, like anything, you know, growing into a servant leader is not just something that it's, you know, take a few classes, you're there. It's every day. Right. And you're under a microscope as a leader. Everybody's watching you, listening to you, whether you know it or not. And so there's opportunities for you to become more self-aware by asking good questions and making it safe for people to give you feedback, because you don't want to go off and think you're communicating something or think that you're acting in a certain way as a leader and finding out later it's not working for some people or for some reason. And you want to have that feedback to continue to hone your leadership skills.
We're going to focus on the growth side of things in the future here, I think, in this conversation. But I think for our audience who are chief marketing officers, who are marketing leaders, who are in that world of communications, this thinking is all based on your experience as, living that every day across many different brands, really big brands. But you've built teams. Like you said, you've lived it, and you know what works, what doesn't work. And well, I think it's that background is so helpful.
Let me just unpack that a little bit, because you used the word brand builder, and I love that, because I don't consider myself a marketer. I did learn marketing at the feet of the master, Don Schultz at Northwestern, who unveiled this, at the time, new concept called integrated marketing communications, or IMC. Well, now it's spread around the globe, and several programs call themselves an IMC program. I actually taught a few years at the IMC graduate program at the University of Kansas. And so learning about integrated marketing communications is a wonderful foundation to help build a brand. Now, I didn't get this then, but I've gotten it over my career that a good CMO isn't just looking after external brand marketing. They should have an influence on the internal brand in the culture of what I'll be calling community here in a minute. But not only that, the employer brand. And not only that, but the personal brand. So if you think about branding, I believe there's really 4 sub-brands that, like I said, 4-circle Venn diagram, which is a model that flows throughout my book. Those 4 brands are interlocked and all revolving around purposeful growth. So there is the personal brand, which all of us have one, whether we know it or not. And that kind of asks the question, who am I? And what are my gifts? And what can I bring to the team? And then there's the internal brand, which is the collective we. What do we believe? And that gets after our purposeful vision, mission, and shared values and how we do business. And then there's the external brand, which is your guests or customers, clients. Maybe it's your communities and media, et cetera, those who directly interface with your brand and ask the question, what value is exchanged here? Right. All marketing is a value exchange, right? When you get right down to it, what do I get for what do I pay? And what do I ascribe to that value? And it's different for different people, for different products and services, et cetera, et cetera. But then finally, the employer brand asks the question, do I belong here? So we're seeing, unprecedented, labor issues with hiring, with retention, with engagement. There's the thing the kids are calling quiet quitting these days in this new hybrid world of work. For a brand to stand out in this crowded world and tell their story in a way that makes someone feel like I could see myself there. I belong there. And why do I use the word belong so much? Because for me, in this world of DEI, diversity just gets us in the door. Okay. Equity gives us an equal voice. That's good. Inclusion gets us a seat at the table, better yet. But if we don't feel like we belong, we're likely not going to be vulnerable enough to give up our very best. We're probably going to not want to rock the boat. Well, who wins in that scenario? We don't get the best from that team member. They're not getting the best from the organization. They're just happy to be in the room where it happens, to quote Hamilton. And that's not good for anybody. The role of a great leader is to build a sense of community, not culture. A culture may just be a place we feel like we're a part of. Not bad. A community is a place we feel like we belong in. You see the difference?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to go down that even further when we talk about this, or things have changed, right? in terms of generations coming into the workplace and expectations and needs. Before we jump into kind of what has changed and why is this important now, your book is called The Purposeful Growth Revolution, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of talked about it a little bit, but what does that mean and why should I care?
Yeah. Well, it's very timely and relevant to what's going on right now. When you think about the word revolution, I looked it up at the dictionary and found there's 3 definitions. The first one is an uprising of the people. Well, we all kind of know about the French Revolution, American Revolution, maybe Arab Spring, what have you. But in this case, the Sloan School of Management at MIT did a study of 34 million people that left the workplace during COVID and asked them a simple question, why? And by an answer of 10x over the second most given answer, the number one answer was toxic work environment. People were like saying, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore. Life's too short. We were all kind of given a bit of a time out during COVID to kind of deeply reflect on not only what, but who matters most in our life. And when things got back to quote unquote normal, we were not really wanting to go back to that. And so an uprising of the people, you heard of the Great Resignation, which I call the Great Repurposing for a different reason. That was the first definition. The second one is a radical change in the status quo. Do you think we've had a radical change in the status quo through COVID with now people working remotely, hybrid work environments, AI with Chat GPT and the others that are coming along? There's a radical change in the status quo. It's almost as if things were already trending in this way, but COVID kind of put everything in a bit of a microwave and heated it up on high and kind of advanced the development or the curve of innovation faster than maybe it would have otherwise. And then the final definition is a circular object orbiting another one. So that's revolutionary kind of literally, right? Well, who's that object revolving around? You and me and everybody, if we think about our personal brand. And so I think about that again in this 4-circle Venn diagram. And I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek and this whole start with why movement. But Matt, I'm telling you, I think he missed the mark as a marketer. Where he came from is I believe we should start with who, and specifically who we serve. And I break that down again in that 4-circle Venn diagram. I think there are 4 realms of service. There's spiritual, there's relational, there's professional, and there's personal. We're whole people. And so as we think about our personal brand, who we serve is really the foundation. Much like in marketing, we talk about target audience. In sales, you may talk about personas or ideal customer avatars, et cetera, et cetera. It always starts with who. And then you move to why. Why then becomes your motivation for doing what you do. So your who leads you to your why and your motivation. And then that leads you to your how, which I believe are your unique gifts. How are you unique and different? And how have you been blessed with specific skills and abilities and interests that can add value to the team that then leads to your what? What specific roles, responsibilities do you have as a member of the team? And so to me, that model is really, really important as we move into this new world of work.
Well, one thing before we get too far, I want to kind of just second that who, not why. I think that's, I don't know. I haven't heard that before. There are people who write books about it's the who when it comes to like building great companies and businesses. But when I start to think about the who versus the why, you're totally right. It informs the why. And I think people can sometimes find that if they do this digging and soul searching, they might be serving the wrong who, or maybe they are serving the right who, but they're following the wrong chow or something. It makes me think about like, if you're somebody who has a family, maybe for example, and is that family's your who, and that's why you show up to work every day and so on and so forth. Or maybe some people are struggling and they're sort of trying to, this is kind of weird and dark, but seek their father's approval. And they're spending all their life sort of trying to serve that who when they really need to be doing some digging and soul searching to find out who's the real who here.
Yeah, and the way I like the 4-circle Venn diagram is the 4 circles aren't always even. Matter of fact, they're probably never even. They're going to ebb and flow.
Right.
To your point, let's say you may have a new baby.
Yeah. 9 months.
I can hear. And so that all of a sudden makes your family a bigger circle, right?
Right.
Or let's say you got a new job. Well, now that professional realm is going to be bigger, right?
I think people generally, we talk a lot about the word purpose, find your purpose.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about really intentional growth or purposeful growth,
yes,
that's about sort of centering yourself around the who
Yeah.
and where to start and
Yeah.
how to work through that conversation.
Yeah, it's all about alignment, right? And you wouldn't drive a car that was out of alignment very far, or you'd ruin your tires, right? So when you have those 4 realms of service aligned, then now you're able to grow up into your purpose. And so I actually like the word purposeful better, because purpose is a noun, and it might be something someone would go, where's my purpose? Like, I haven't found my purpose yet, and I'm drifting, and I've heard that from people. And I say, look, you're going to have maybe a different purpose in different seasons of your life, as we were just talking about. But you can be purposeful every day, right? And that's something that's an action word. So I prefer purposeful versus purpose, because you're always going to be wanting to aspire up into growing up into your purpose, but to do it every day, much like the fig tree in my backyard that gave me the epiphany for this concept, is growing every day. You can't see it, right? Because, it happens slowly, as do we in our life. Sometimes we get growth spurts, sometimes we go backwards, but, the idea is to have that seed that's planted that allows someone to grow up into who God made them to be. And now this fig tree in my backyard only knows how to be a fig tree, right? So its purpose is to grow up and bear fig leaves that can help it grow further, as well as fig fruit that not only can provide sustenance for animals and people, but the seeds inside can be scattered for future growth. And that's where there's this virtuous cycle of reciprocity, or what I call paying it backward. And that means when I go to Starbucks, like I just did today, I pay for the car behind me. This was an expensive one because it was $22. And the guy said, "Are you sure you want to do it?" And I said, "No, I'm committed to it." Because you used another word a few minutes ago, Matt. You said intentional. See, I don't believe in just random acts of kindness where, the spirit moves me, I'll do something, random. I believe in intentional acts of kindness. And I believe that comes from who you are. If you have that mindset to be of service, that's great. Not everybody has to, but you have to find what it is for you, what lights you up, what fulfills you. And there's a difference in between these 4 key emotions of fun, happiness, joy, and fulfillment. Fun is momentary, and it's, I had fun at the concert last night, and it's an internal feeling. Joy or happiness is also an internal feeling, and it may last a little longer, but then you get to joy, and that's when you start to feel like it's more outer directed. When you do something for others, it makes you feel more joyful than if something just happens to you. And then finally you get to fulfillment. And being fulfilled, to me, is more kind of eternal. And that means when your life is done, have you fulfilled whatever you feel like you were meant to do on this earth? What a great
Fulfilling
feeling.
your potential.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Go ahead.
well, I have to ask, where does paying it backward and paying for the person behind you Starbucks fall in? Is that joy?
Yeah. For me, it's joy. Okay. But there's an element of fulfillment to it, because here's what I do, Matt, and not saying this to brag or whatever at all. I'm saying this because I hope others will do it. And why is by paying it backward. I say I can't pay for the car in front of me. They've already gone. So people are wondering, like, why is Mark saying pay it backward? Isn't it pay it forward? No, it's not. And if you think about it this way, you'll come to my line of reasoning, I think. When I get up there, I will tell the person at the window, I want to pay for the car behind me. And they'll say, that's great. And then I say, all I want you to do is say, God bless you, your debt has been paid. And they often light up and go, yeah, I'll do that. And so I drive away and I say a silent prayer for whoever it is in that car. Today it was a young woman. And so I'm looking behind me. And then when he said her order is $22, you still want to do it. I'm like, I'm committed. I'm going to do it because she's probably buying drinks for a bunch of people. Right. So now, instead of me feeling like I'm blessing one person, I'm having the opportunity to create a ripple effect to reach more people through that intentional act of kindness. Right. And then what I find through the law of reciprocity, and it's a thing, as I was researching my book, it's basically a law that says when someone does something nice for you, you feel a deep-seated urge to do something nice for somebody else, and oftentimes in greater measure. So now imagine that intentional act of kindness creates this larger effect, ripple effect. And so isn't that being purposeful? Every day I have a chance to make choices. How do I want to grow into my purpose? And I have to be purposeful. Well, what are ways that I can do that, right? And so I have professional ways that I do that. I have spiritual ways that I do that. I have relational ways that I do that. And I have, personal ways that I do that. And so I kind of, in my mind, think, how can I do that? And how can I make every day count?
In the categories. And I got to say, what's your license plate number? I just want to ask it for a friend. What's kind of the make and model of your car? Just see you on the highway and happen to dip in behind you on Starbucks. Just want to make sure I recognize you.
No, and I've met some people that will do that at McDonald's or they'll do that somewhere else. So I'm not special, I don't believe. So, but I do believe that I made a commitment, and so I like to feel like I keep a commitment. And regardless of whether it was a $3 cup of coffee or an order for the office, whatever, I'm committed to paying it backwards. So the same thing goes with writing this book. As I mentioned, I never thought I would be an author. I never set out to be one. Never thought I'd write a book. But when I got this epiphany and started writing some things down and started to think, wait a minute, this could be a cool model for me to really fulfill a purpose statement that I had written several years ago, which is, I don't want to just make money and retire. I want to make a difference and inspire.
Absolutely. And you gave me a really good example when we talked sort of previous to this podcast about sort of this anecdote about how work and management and leadership and employees have changed. Yeah. And could you share that?
Yeah. I mean, there's studies that show that, leadership models have changed after World War II when GIs who've been trained, to fight in a war. And we all heard about boot camp. I didn't have the honor of serving in any branch of service, but I admire the heck of those and their families who do. But we all heard about, boot camp training, right? And we've seen movies. And so that's command and control, right? It's salute and execute, right? And so some leaders became CEOs of companies and they just carried through that same management style. And you'll note that I think words matter. So I say management versus leadership. So management style. And we revered great managers who have turned around companies like Lee Iacocca in the 80s with Chrysler, wrote a book about it. Jack Welch, who grew GE and yet, was notorious for letting go the bottom 10% of his workforce each year. And then you have Steve Jobs, who got his point across, but yet built arguably the most valuable company in the world. Well, today, I believe that management style is no longer serving all four stakeholders: team members, customers, business partners, and communities. And so, what I say is, looking at all the Gallup information that I've looked at is, to your point, how could you be purposeful as a leader? Well, here's what's missing, according to Gallup, in terms of the reason why engagement levels are at historic lows. clarity of expectations, connection to the mission or purpose of the company. I didn't make this up. Opportunities to learn and grow, opportunities to do what employees, I'll say team members, do best, and really importantly, feeling cared about at work.
When you talk about people like Lee Iacocca, or even more important, like Steve Jobs now, the only way people talk about him is about like how he changed everything and used innovation to, like you said, create one of the most valuable companies on the planet. Very few people are saying what you're saying, which is that management style worked and now it doesn't.
Yeah, because a lot of people left Apple because of the work conditions and his tyrannical style. And so today, people aren't willing to put up with that. They'll go somewhere else because life's too short. And you know what? I've worked for 35 years. Like I said, I had some wonderful mentors and leaders, but I also had some stinkers. And yet we all soldiered on because that's what our parents did. And that's what we were taught to do in my generation. But today, the millennials and Gen Z, and I know I have 25-year-old twin daughters, and this is just me search, but I can guarantee you their expectation of work is so much different than it was when I was first coming up.
Well, I have two questions that I have to ask. They're a little off topic. The first one is this. What is one word or phrase that we should stop using in the workplace?
I really believe that culture is a word that is thrown around, and it's probably one of the most misunderstood words because it's difficult to define, right? And so, again, I believe that the word community is a better word than culture. And I would get people together because we all know what we feel like when we're in a community where we feel like we belong. It's safe. It's comfortable. It allows you to stretch and grow without judgment.
Great. I like it. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to start saying community.
Good.
Last question. What's something about you that your colleagues might find surprising? I know you've worked at a lot of different companies, but something that they might find surprising that they might not have known about you.
I played the drums.
Wow.
And so I don't know if I've told that many people that I grew up playing the drums.
But you're a drummer and I'm a drummer.
Oh, cool.
So would you play, like, what kind of music did you play? Tell me more about that.
My influences were the Stones, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Pink Floyd, and I can go on and on and on. You look at some of the great drummers, and I always wanted to be them. And I always tried to practice what they did, and I could never quite get it because I didn't have the enormous drum kit they did. But I would always try to go through some of their riffs and finishes and try to see if I could emulate that. And we had a little band in high school, and that was kind of fun. We played out in the parking lot of a swimming pool as kind of our big gig.
What was the name of your band?
It was Country Cream. I didn't name it.
Country Cream.
Yep. I didn't name it, but one of the guys that was the leader of the band said that's what we're going to be. And we didn't play country, play rock. So I don't know, but I hadn't thought about that name in years, Matt. Thank you for jogging my memory. That was great.
Wow. Mark, thank you so much for joining.
Hey, my pleasure. I really enjoyed getting to know you before the show last week and now during the show, and hope we can stay in touch.
You bet.
El Fango.